Tonight, we are covering one of the most disturbing, most mysterious, and most intriguing cases in the country. And it just got even more off the wall when the defendant fired his attorney in the middle of a critical hearing. It was surprising, but it's what the prosecution did then that will really shock you. Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Tiny Bardstown, Kentucky has had an inordinate number of murders or mysterious disappearances, 5 in the past 10 years. Many residents think they could be linked, but this is the first to be charged. Crystal Rogers, a mom of 5, disappeared on July 3rd, 2015. The next day, her car was found abandoned on the side of the Blue Ridge Parkway, but her body has never been found. Let's take a look at this chart because I want to show you what it is that the prosecution believes happened. So let me add that to the stage. So taking a look at that, Crystal Rogers, you see at the bottom, that is the woman who has disappeared. She was a mom of 5. She had 1 child with the man you see in the middle, Brooks Houck. Now, her father, Tommy Ballard, is on this chart because he too was murdered. He was murdered by a gunshot in his own yard about a year after Crystal was killed. Ironically, he was about to set out later that day on a hunt for her body, as many times people had done over the years she had been gone. The other 2 men you see on this chart, Joseph Lawson and Stephen Lawson, have also been charged in connection with the disappearance and murder of Crystal Rogers. Brooks Houck is charged as the person who got others to help him and murdered Crystal Rogers. Stephen Lawson turned sort of state's evidence. We're going to talk about that tonight. He gave interviews in which he implicated Brooks Houck, and we'll talk about that. And Joseph Lawson is Stephen Lawson's son. Both of those men are charged with having been involved in the murder of Crystal Rogers. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on Stephen Lawson. Now, let me pull that out and talk to you a little bit more. So Stephen Lawson was a longtime employee, or not, as the judge noted, of Brooks Houck, the boyfriend of Crystal Rogers who disappeared. Now, Stephen Lawson has been indicted for complicity to tampering with physical evidence and then later for criminal conspiracy to commit murder, all connected to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. Tonight, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to do a quick refresher on what happened, the murder, and some of the other relationships around it. We're going to talk about the wild immunity battle. Just going to graze the surface here so you can understand what's going on with the attorney battle we're going to watch at the end. You are then going to watch the attorney firing mid-hearing, and you're going to see the very surprising reaction of the prosecutor. From last night, I want to say a welcome to Kaylee Niski as a new member, and I also want to welcome Indie Girl 57, both new members. And I want to say a special shout out to the first 5 in tonight's live stream who were not the first 5 last night because we're trying to spread the love around. Denise Pelton, Shy Gal 8, Indie Girl 57, KS, and Michael Lalonde. So special welcome to all of y'all and to everybody watching. So let's talk about the murder and some of the facts around it. Authorities say that Brooks Houck did not seem all that cut up, as we would put it in the South, about his girlfriend's disappearance, and that he did precious little to find her. He says he thought she was at a friend's house, that she'd done this before. But certainly Crystal Rogers' family went all out trying to find her. And about a year after Crystal disappeared, her father was, as I mentioned earlier, mysteriously shot while standing in his own yard. And on that very day, he had been planning to go with a group for yet another hunt for Crystal, or where she could possibly be. Now, Brooks Houck's family, he's the boyfriend, has been part of the drama surrounding this case. Brooks' brother, Nick, who was a police officer, lost his job when he tried to give Brooks a heads up before a police interview. At least that's what the police say. Then at a hearing shortly after Brooks was arrested, prosecutors called out the entire Houck family for surreptitiously recording their grand jury testimony. Now, grand jury testimony is secret, and the prosecutors seemed to believe that they recorded it in order to help get their stories straight so they didn't contradict each other. Although prosecutors didn't really clarify exactly what they believed was the reason behind it. And the Houck family is not the only family connection, because in addition to Stephen Lawson, as you saw, his son Joseph has been indicted and is also in jail right now awaiting trial. Authorities say he also participated in the conspiracy and in the cover-up. And now we get to one of the most intriguing parts of the case, the immunity, or in this case, more precisely, the lack of immunity for Stephen Lawson. Stephen Lawson cooperated, sort of. When they brought him in, they offered him a deal and he talked a little. Apparently, it was enough to implicate himself, Brooks Houck, and even his son, Joseph Lawson. Stephen Lawson thought he was getting immunity, but it turns out he was really wrong on that score. So we're going to go into detail about what he said to authorities on another video, because we do have a lot of extra information about what the facts are now. But for tonight, I want to do a quick tour through what happened on the immunity so we can get to the part where the attorney was fired mid-hearing. So Stephen Lawson talked to police, but he did not get a written immunity deal. And it was dependent on him telling the truth. And that's what prosecutors say. They say he clearly did not tell the truth. He clearly contradicted himself, and they couldn't trust what he said. Therefore, he did not get immunity. And the court agreed. Let's take a look at that. I forgot to, oh, good. Okay. I was double checking to make sure that video and sound were okay. I forgot to check that earlier. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to put this back up on the screen and then switch over to another document so I can tell you more about this. Okay, so here we go. We are looking at the court's order related to immunity. And like I say, I'm just going to do a quick tour through so you get the general overview. We're not going to go into detail tonight. So unfortunately, I thought this was a funny comment. Unfortunately, for reasons unbeknownst to the court, the parties never executed a written immunity agreement herein. And I know everyone is wishing that they had done that, because it created a lot of problems that there wasn't ever anything written down. In support of his motion to dismiss, Lawson provides transcribed portions from his recorded interviews. Let me make sure I have it set right. Okay. With law enforcement and or the special prosecutor. The transcribed portions indicate that the Commonwealth's offer of immunity was based upon Lawson providing a completely truthful statement. However, at the hearing, Lawson's counsel refused to stipulate to that being the agreement. And there were quotes that made that fairly clear. Instead, defense counsel asked the court to review Lawson's recorded interviews without providing any citation to another alleged agreement. In addition, and the court, as you can see, put this in bold, Lawson failed to call any witness about an alternative immunity agreement, including his attorney, who was present for most of these discussions and or statements. We are going to hear more about that when it comes time for the firing of the lawyer. After having reviewed many hours of lengthy interviews, plus all other materials submitted, this court finds that Lawson has established by a preponderance of the evidence the existence of an immunity agreement. However, this court further finds by a preponderance of the evidence that this agreement was contingent upon Lawson providing a completely truthful statement. So it's a good news and a bad news sort of thing for Stephen Lawson. The good news, there was an agreement. Even though you didn't write it down, I'm going to find that there was an agreement that you would get immunity under it. But I'm also going to find that you breached the agreement. It was contingent on you telling the truth, and you didn't. And Stephen Lawson not being truthful meant he doesn't get the benefit of that. And that's what the court is saying. So let's skip down a little bit. Having found the existence of an immunity agreement, the burden now shifts to the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt why the agreement is invalid or why prosecution should be allowed. In response, the Commonwealth contends that Lawson breached this agreement by being untruthful in every interview. The court then asked defense counsel to identify the alleged truthful statement so the Commonwealth could have an opportunity to challenge same. However, defense counsel replied that all of Lawson's statements were truthful, or in the alternative, that he did not deliberately lie. This court has now thoroughly reviewed all of Lawson's interviews and grand jury testimonies. These recordings clearly establish that Lawson provided wildly inconsistent information about matters that are material to the Commonwealth's investigation and prosecution. This court will now provide some specific examples of these contradictions. So the defense claimed everything that he said was absolutely truthful. And the court says there is no possible way that's true because you said the opposite throughout this. You'd say one thing and say the exact opposite later. It can't be that you told the truth the whole time. That's just false. And you didn't give me another agreement. It could have been anything other than that. Tell the truth and you get immunity. Don't tell the truth and you don't. So the court gives some examples. We'll do a deep dive on those one day. We'll go into specifically what Stephen Lawson has said about what happened and some of the contradictions in that. So let's go quickly down, though, to the actual ruling by the court because I want to get to our video. After considering all of the above, this court finds beyond a reasonable doubt that Lawson breached his immunity agreement with his untruthfulness about matters that are clearly material to the Commonwealth's investigation and prosecution. As a result, this court finds that the prosecution should be allowed to proceed despite the agreement. So the court is ruling with the Commonwealth. They're going to be allowed to prosecute Stephen Lawson. He doesn't get immunity. A huge blow because whether you believe every statement he made or not, he made a lot of incriminating statements that will show he was involved and that the prosecution believes shows Brooke Houck was involved and that his son Joseph was involved as well. The court is somewhat befuddled with Lawson's contradictory argument. We're going to hear more about this. In essence, Lawson seeks to exclude his interviews pursuant to KRE 410, Kentucky Rule of Evidence, which this court is willing to do, but then he wants to use these same interviews for his defense. So the court is just left scratching his head. Okay, so do you want the interviews or you don't want the interviews? I'm confused about what you want. This court finds that KRE 410 clearly creates a privilege for Lawson. However, like any other evidentiary privilege, Lawson can waive or vary that privilege. They make a cite there. As a result, this court finds that Lawson must decide whether he wants these interviews admitted or excluded at trial. So the court is saying your argument really doesn't make any sense. The prosecutor is trying to consolidate the three cases. The prosecutor wants to try Brooke Houck and Stephen Lawson and Joseph Lawson in one lawsuit. Doesn't want to try three different criminal cases, wants them all in one case. So Brooke Houck is opposing that. Brooke Houck, the boyfriend of Crystal Rogers, and they live together, wants them tried separately. Stephen Lawson joined Brooke Houck's motion saying, yes, I want to be tried separately also. But Brooks wants to use Stephen Lawson's statement. So the argument that Brooks made for wanting separate trials was, I need a separate trial because I'm going to be using the statement that Stephen Lawson made, presumably to say, here's your guy, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen Lawson committed the murder. Don't look at me. Why, his own words hang him. And that's what probably Brooke Houck would say. So the court says, okay, you seem to be straddling the fence on this, Stephen Lawson. Is it that you want separate trials or are you trying to use your statement? What are you trying to do here? And said, we are going to set a date. You're going to come and you're going to tell me yes or no. Do you want to use your statements? Because even though he might want to use those statements as evidence in his own favor, or he might want to not use those and insist that the state not be allowed to use it. And let's go ahead and take a quick look at Kentucky Rule of Evidence 410 so you can understand more about what's being said here. In a civil or criminal case, evidence of the following is not admissible against the defendant who made the plea or participated in the plea discussions. That would be Stephen Lawson. A statement made during plea discussions with an attorney for the prosecuting authority if the discussions did not result in a guilty plea or they resulted in a later withdrawn guilty plea. So there is the possibility that Stephen Lawson could say, I'm going to protect everything I said under this rule, and I am not going to let the state use anything that I said. Now, the court has limited it and said, well, it's only the part said after the prosecuting attorney came in. Before that doesn't count, and after these negotiations doesn't count. But that middle part, the court is saying, I would rule, if you want me to, that the state isn't allowed to use that. But I don't know if that's what you want or not. So this was the very hearing. What's supposed to happen at the hearing you are about to see, and I'll go ahead and pull out so you can see, but so I can see you better. So what was supposed to happen at this hearing is Stephen Lawson is supposed to come in and say, yes, I want you to rule that the state cannot use my statements, or I would like to use my statements in my own defense, so I'm not going to request that. That's what the court thinks is going to happen at this hearing. That is not what happens at this hearing. It's quite different, in fact. So I want to do a little bit more about why it is that the Commonwealth argued, and let me go ahead and pull up, is it this? Yep, this is the Commonwealth's reply. Let me add this back to the stage so you can see this. So this is what and I'll make it bigger too, because that seems real small. The defendant, because remember I said it seemed contradictory and the court seemed confused, so was the Commonwealth, the prosecution in this case. And they said the defendant, Stephen Lawson, has simply adopted the objections offered by Houck. To do so in his position is both confusing and illogical. Much of Houck's objection is based on the concept that if he's tried with Stephen Lawson, Houck will be precluded from introducing statements made by Stephen Lawson, which are protected by KRE 410. Given that Lawson is joined in the motion, the Commonwealth reminds Stephen Lawson that the rule creates a privilege for him. So definite confusion. I think that's fine. Well, let's go ahead and move toward our video. So this is the hearing we're about to watch. We are about to see the hearing where the judge thinks what's going to happen is there's going to be an election by Stephen Lawson, use, don't use.
See, at this time, what the record reflects, we're taking up two actions. We're taking up Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Joseph Lawson.
So I thought that part was really interesting because from the minute the hearing starts, so Judge walks in and he's standing up. That's right there, Stephen Lawson. He's standing up to talk to the judge. Now, that's so unusual that probably everybody just thought he was confused, didn't realize the hearing had started. So there was nothing about it that made them think, oh, here's the moment when something strange is about to happen. But you can see that he wanted to say something. He realizes the judge is not going to call on him, and he sits back down. So that alone was very interesting. And let's take a look at what happens next. He raises his hand, and here is the moment.
23 CR 183 and 23 CR 239. After that, it appears that Mr. Lavin filed a motion or filed a response on yesterday's date in which Mr. Lavin doesn't wish to provide an answer to that question. Would that be correct, Mr. Lavin?
So there are two things important here. First, that the attorney for Stephen Lawson doesn't want to answer the question, doesn't want to either say, I'm going to use the statements or I'm not going to, wants to wait. Secondly, what's important is that he filed a motion yesterday, and you're going to hear some more about that from the prosecutor.
Mr. Lawson, why are you holding your hand up for?
I need to ask you a question, sir.
What are you doing?
I need to approach or stand up and say something to the court, sir.
Okay, well, what is it you're wanting to say? But let me remind you, everything that you're saying here is being recorded and it could be used against you. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay, well, what is it that you're wanting to say?
It's come to my attention, I don't think. I'm not trying to knock nobody. My attorney's doing his job for me anymore. I can't use his, I don't know what you call it. His counsel anymore, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't
I
understand.
can't use his counsel anymore, sir.
Okay, are you saying that you're wanting a different attorney?
Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm saying, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I didn't make myself clear. I apologize.
Okay. Are you able to afford it?
Not right this second, no, sir.
Okay. So you're wanting to discharge Mr. Lapp, is that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Is the Commonwealth?
So that raises an interesting question. If he can't afford another attorney, who is paying for this attorney? There's not an answer at any point in here, but that's certainly a really interesting question. Who has been paying this attorney? But you hear him say very clearly, I don't think I can use him as my attorney anymore. I want different counsel. I can't use his counsel anymore, he says. He's not doing his job for me anymore. And shockingly, what is about to happen next is that the prosecution jumps in on the side of the defendant and says that Stephen Lawson, in fact, has already fired this lawyer, and the lawyer shouldn't have filed anything at all. So I have two people I need to thank. Mama Pinks, thank you so much for gifting 5 Lawyer League memberships. And I also want to thank Shy Gal 8 for also gifting 5 Lawyer League memberships. I really appreciate our members. It's just a way of adding some financial support for the channel. It's what helps me actually do this as often as I do, and I'm very appreciative. So let's keep watching our video.
Any objection to that?
No, sir, we do not. As a matter of fact, Judge, we have serious concerns about whether Mr. Lawson has had conflict-free counsel in his representation. I have been privy, obviously the court is aware, as I think the parties are, that the jail calls are regularly monitored of the defendants in this case. On August the 4th, there was a jail call that Mr. Lawson had with his family in which he said he had already fired Mr. Lavitt and told him that he no longer required his services because Mr. Lavitt had been meeting with Brooks Houck's attorneys behind his back and had admitted that to him, and that he did not want to continue with him. So I can tell the court that I was surprised yesterday when we got a response from Mr. Lavitt on this motion, because I had assumed that he would have filed a motion to withdraw on this case and would have informed the court that his client no longer wanted him to represent him.
Do you hear how astonishing that is? The prosecutor just got up and said, we're also worried that he doesn't have conflict-free counsel. In other words, that the counsel may have a conflict of interest. We're also worried that he's not receiving fair representation because we have heard on jail calls that Lavitt was fired. What is he doing filing anything? He's been fired. He shouldn't be here at all. He shouldn't be filing anything on behalf of the client. He doesn't represent the client anymore. I don't know if this has ever happened in a hearing before, but it is absolutely astonishing. You know, the prosecutor is going to go on to say that the prosecution believes the lawyer supposedly representing Stephen Lawson has just been parroting Brooks Houck's motions, not representing his client.
I previously informed this court in the pleadings that we filed in this case, in particular, Mr. Lawson's, the response to Mr. Lawson's motion for immunity, that there is a peculiarity going all the way back to March between these two defendants and the motions that they have filed, or the pleadings that they filed in this case. Well, we have 190,000 words that have been spoken in the interviews with Steve Lawson, and they both managed to pull out the exact same quotes out of the interviews to put in each of their motions. Some of them are not even supportive of Mr. Lawson's claim for immunity. I'm not even sure why the quote would be in there. But they also contain the same misquotes in each motion. They contain the same paraphrasing of people's statements in each motion. They contain the same, such and such walked in the room. They're phrased exactly the same. It defies reason that they would be exactly the same.
Appears that Mr. Lavin.
Let me go ahead and stop it there. We get now a little bit of a window into what the state thought was going to happen when there was an election made at that prior hearing. They were expecting proof of what the truth was going to be from Stephen Lawson. In other words, pick a story, any story. All of them seem to implicate somebody. And it almost sounds as if the state is still willing to offer a deal to Stephen Lawson if he will just pick a side, if he will pick his story and then stick with whichever one it is, depending on the various stories that he told during the interrogation. So, and instead of putting on any evidence, Stephen Lawson put on no evidence at all, did nothing to support any one story that was told. And that wasn't in Stephen Lawson's best interest, the prosecution said, but it was in Brooks Houck's best interest.
Filed a motion or filed a response on yesterday's date in which Mr. Lavin doesn't wish to provide an answer to that question. Would that be correct, Mr. Lavin? Mr. Lawson, why are you holding your hand up?
Oh, they're not. Oh no, I went too far back. Let's get back here.
Inquire about. It's disturbing.
Let me ask
He
you
went
back.
around and around and around that. He walked out of his courtroom and gave a press conference in which he
Okay.
spouted.
Sorry, we're gonna have to back up.
There was
Just
nothing
one more.
put forward. Since he, or Brooks Houck's attorneys, since he obviously gave us information about Brooks Houck, and he would
Okay,
have.
and let me read the sentence before that. And I cannot get any scenario in my head where an immunity motion on behalf of Mr. Lawson, in which he has to claim that everything that he spoke in those interviews with 100% the truth, could in any way be a collaborative effort with Brooks Houck, since he overlaps attorneys, since he obviously gave us information about Brooks.
To affirm that. And I think we saw that when we had the hearing on those motions. Mr. Lavin couldn't even tell the court what was in his own motion on that date. And he did nothing to affirm that Mr. Lawson had told 100% the truth. He put on no evidence. There was nothing put forth on that date. And after that hearing, in which he sat here and told the court that his client did tell the truth, eventually told the court that he went around and around and around that, he walked out of his courtroom and gave a press conference in which he spouted Brooks Houck's defense again, that Steve Lawson was told what to say in those interviews, and it essentially said he didn't tell 100% the truth.
Which she says is contradictory. And then there is the kaboom, because the prosecutor goes all in on this not being adequate counsel for Stephen Lawson.
I don't know what's going on here, but I know that it's something that I think the court needs to inquire about. It's disturbing. I'm not sure that Mr. Lawson has received conflict-free counsel. I'm not sure that he has had what he's entitled to under the Sixth Amendment.
I can respond briefly, Judge.
This is and now you're going to hear a brief, not real vigorous defense by the attorney representing Stephen
I
Lawson.
arranged for a meeting with my client, Steve Lawson, this past week. Went over to see him in the jail here in Nelson County, and he was in a good frame of mind, good humor. I explained what we were going to be doing here today at 1:30. He told me he understood it because I went over it with him twice. He has never called my office and told me personally that he wished to discharge me or that there was any conflict of any kind. So I have done my best at this point in time without any conflict whatsoever concerning my client. And I believe that Mr. Lawson has been aware of what I've been doing on his behalf since he engaged me. That's all I have to say, Judge, unless the court has some questions for me.
And at this point, the judge checks back in with Stephen Lawson, who is resolute. He is not having that attorney anymore.
Mr. Lawson, I'm assuming nothing has been said here today to change your mind.
No, sir, Your Honor, it has not. I apologize for wasting your time.
So you want to have a public defender appointed for you?
Yes, until I see what I cannot do, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
At this time, the court is going to find that Mr. Lawson has requested to discharge his attorney here today. I'm going to show that his request is granted. I'm going to show that DPA is to appoint an attorney to represent Mr. Lawson. Please be seated.
Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that out and talk to y'all more directly. So the judge goes on to say, look, I've got a trial date. I've got a trial date in February. We need to get someone down here this second because we are going to trial in February, and I'm not putting it off because of this. I'm going to go forward, so everybody get moving on getting him this new lawyer. Now, one of the things that we have to talk about next in this case, we've got more to talk about in terms of what exactly Stephen Lawson said, because he gave us all kinds of new important facts. But there are so many cases hitting right now. We've got Murdoch, we've got Karen Reed with some new information, tons of new information in Donna Adelson's case. So Cindy Johnson, I want to thank you very much for the super sticker. There is a lot going on. I did 2 videos today. Please go and take a look. In fact, I can put in the chat, I think, the link to the video, and then we'll also put it, as soon as YouTube processes this video, I can put it in the actual link at the end of the video, but I have to wait until YouTube processes it. So put your questions in, and if you would, be sure to put question marks at the beginning, and that makes it a lot easier for me to spot it. We'll take just a very few questions, and I will look for what interests you and what you are wondering about, especially about this case. Tonight is a super big night. We have some huge news that I want to share with you. The channel reached 25 million lifetime views today, and I am just overwhelmed. I mean, I can't even comprehend that number, but 25 million people have watched videos. There have been 25 million views of the videos on this channel. So I cannot thank you enough for that. It is such an honor. I wanted to help people understand the legal cases that everybody is talking about. And the idea that I have had 25 million chances to do that is just such an honor. I mean, beyond anything I could have even imagined. We have a very special outro tonight designed by Marlon just to celebrate our 25 millionth view, and which could be you. It could be you who were the 25 millionth view last night. If you were watching last night, it could have been you. And so we are going to watch that as the outro. But first, I want to see if there are any questions. Wait, what? Question? No, here we go. Okay, Martina, given the prosecutor's help, is it possible to get a deal at this point? I think it might be. I think it really might be for Stephen Lawson, because it seems like she still wants to, she is still interested in that discussion. I was really intrigued by what she said. That is very unusual. And it also is really important given that she is trying to do the right thing. She seems to truly be concerned that there isn't adequate representation for him, that there's a conflict of interest with his attorney, because that's a very scary thing for a prosecutor. Prosecutor is trying to make sure that the right person is convicted, and this could make it really difficult for her to do that. So I want to welcome Diane Cooper, who is a new member, and Neurosite Zena has been a member for 2 months. Oh, thank you for the congratulations, Neurosite Zena. I appreciate that very much. Okay, headed back over for questions. I wonder if you would tell me in the chat, how many of you have heard about this case? I have a few videos on this case, but have you heard about it? Because it is really, really interesting. I think it's going to become one of the ones that everybody talks about, but sometimes it can be slow as it takes off and as people learn more about it. Okay, Annie K asking me, if Lawson testifies, won't he or any like witness now be reluctant to be forthcoming with details since immunity wasn't confirmed? And is he being thrown under the bus instead of the person who actually committed the murder? So I think the answer is this. Yes, he would be very afraid of that. I think he would want different counsel and he would want a signed agreement. That's what he should have had from the beginning. And then it would have been a lot clearer. You saw in the judge's comment, the judge wishes that had happened too. The judge doesn't like having to make a call like that. So clearly it would have been much, much better had it been in writing. Tennis girl, do you think these immunity deals are good and do they usually work? Well, typically it's a risky thing for a defendant because even if the prosecution can't use exactly what's said, the prosecution can use the information and find things around it. So in other words, knowing that you have now told them the body is hidden in the backyard under the elm tree, they can go look at the backyard under the elm tree if they can find another way to get that information. They know what they're looking for. They can't use the information you gave them, but they can try to find it by a roundabout different way. And so that's actually, it can be risky anytime for a defendant. On the other hand, it's also a chance to buy something, which is to be cooperative and to buy the goodwill of the prosecution and to get a deal out of it. We saw that Michelle Troconis also went in without a deal, without a written deal, unlike Pavel Gumieni, and that as a result, she ended up being the one prosecuted because she talked to the police more than once and they did not believe her when she said she wasn't involved. Okay, oh, that was tennis girls. Okay, I'm going to go back down to the end. That's Annie K's again, looking for question marks at the beginning. Maybe it was so clear this one night that nobody had any questions. I can hope, right? Look, oh, here we go. Here's some more at the bottom. Sam asking me, what kind of sanctions could the lawyer face if the prosecution allegations are found to be true? I don't know that anyone is going to actually investigate it. There would have to be some kind of complaint probably to the bar. Maybe you did hear the prosecutor call for that. The prosecutor said, you need to find out what's going on to the judge. I don't know whether that will be done. It may just be everybody moves on from here. So I don't really know exactly whether or not there will be anything to look into this or to consider it. As far as what kind of sanctions the lawyer could face, well, it depends. If it's the judge, the judge might make a ruling related to this. If it's the bar association, they would look at whether there were any rules that were violated. And in that case, they would follow whatever the rule says the possible remedy for breaking that rule would be. So that's how it would be done. Mary wants to know, did they find Crystal? No, they have not found Crystal Rogers. They've not found her body. They did look pretty hard. And one of the things we've learned in the course of the information we've gotten from Stephen Lawson is there either was or was not a backhoe that they were using at a certain area. So that's an example of one of the contradictions that I believe it's the judge cites. Was the immunity given before any interrogation or during? Martina asked. Well, it actually, we'll go over that, Martina, in another video, but there were 3 periods. There was the period before the immunity happened, the period when the immunity deal was in place, and then the period afterwards. And the judge said, for the stuff you said before and the stuff you said after, you've got nothing. You have no possibility of a deal that would cover that. But for that part in the middle, you have the possibility of a deal. But in this case, I'm not going to give you that deal because of the fact that it was based on your telling the truth, and you did not. You did not tell the truth. That was the whole point of it. And so as a result, they don't have to follow through on this immunity deal that you have. Okay, going to the end. You should try to have the outro in a t-shirt. That I think she's saying some merch. We have been talking about doing merch and what we're going to use for merch. So Shy Gal, thank you for gifting a Lawyer League membership. I really appreciate that. Well, I think it is now time. I hope I have not missed anybody's question, but I want to show you the very special outro which one of our moderators made. We have two, Mama Pinks and Marlon, both of whom have just been of enormous help to me on the channel. I'm so grateful for all that they do. And Marlon has made us a special outro for tonight to celebrate the 25 millionth view for the channel. And thank you, Shy Gal, for another gifted Lawyer League membership. So with no further ado, here we go. The special outro by Marlon. Don't forget, 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, we'll be going live again, an extra bonus live because there is just too much to cover. Can't take any days off. So here is the world premiere outro used only for 1 week.